All right, let me bring in a guest. And joining us now to talk about the ruling is former Nassau County legislator and legal analyst Dave Mejias. And Dave, you surprised here, not just by the decision, but also who basically was that swing vote, in this case, Chief Justice Roberts.
Well, I think Justice Roberts was trying to give some legitimacy back to the court. As you said, with Citizens United and Bush v. Gore and all of the 5-4 decisions that we have seen, I think Justice Roberts wanted to put the court back on track and get the respect that it deserves. And also, I think he wanted to own this decision. This is a Supreme Court decision that will last generations. 30 years from now, Justice Roberts can look back on his legacy and say that he's the one that passed health care reform here in America. There are a lot of decisions over the years in the Supreme Court and even locally that people haven't liked. After a few years goes by, it's not that big of a deal. We see fights like this, political fights like this all the time, and once the people actually see what health care reform is about, I think everyone will be for it.
Do you think this thing was poorly sold to the public, let alone to Washington? Do you think it's going to be sold any differently? I know we're almost in July now. Can this thing be packaged differently so the public's perception on it changes between now and November?
I think one of the biggest failings of the Obama administration has been how they've sold health care reform. This is a tremendous victory for the Obama administration. They now have to turn around years of bad press and make it a victory for themselves, the victory that it truly is. This is also takes away a sledgehammer for the Republicans. They could have said that Obama had acted unconstitutionally and against his oath as president to uphold the Constitution. He now has constitutional legitimacy from the Supreme Court, which I think is important going into the election. And I think it's going to be very difficult for Mitt Romney to fight this bill.
Dave, listen, I think a lot of us, if we said we saw this coming, would be full of it. But I think the prevailing betting line was going to be that the thing was going to be struck down in part and the individual mandate would have gone away. Would that have been your guess before this? Are you surprised, like a lot of us are, that basically the whole thing stands up?
Yeah, I think most people thought that under the Commerce Clause that the Supreme Court, given the conservative nature of the court, would have said that under the Commerce Clause it is unconstitutional. I think looking at it under the tax law and understanding that the mandate is a tax and that Congress has the right to tax is a very creative way of making sure that the law does pass constitutional muster. And the reality is that it is a tax. It probably is constitutional. The Supreme Court should not be making laws. And I think in this particular case, Justice Roberts wanted to make sure that the Supreme Court going forward still had the legitimacy that it once had. It's been suffering tremendously.
Maybe there's some tweaks here that we can make here, the give-backs almost in a certain way to some of those that have been complaining with the implementation. I know it's not fully implemented until 2014, but are there anything that you hear and have heard from constituents that say, you know what, they could redo this a little bit better, that could cause a little bit less of agita from some of the folks?
Yeah. In terms of small businesses, as a small business owner myself, quite frankly, the mandate does not cover me. It's for businesses with less than 50 employees that there is an exemption for under this bill. And it does create health care exchanges that would actually lower the prices, the cost of health care for the average citizen, because you're requiring everybody to be in that risk pool, and which lowers the price for everybody else. The risk pool is evened out by the good drivers, and that's what we're doing, mandating that young people be part of the pool here, which makes the risk pool, the risk lower, and evens out the cost for everybody else. So I think there's a lot of great potential in this bill. There's a lot of potential for small businesses to add. There are tax advantages for small businesses that want to provide health care for their employees. There's a lot of great parts of this bill which the Obama administration has not sold. What they have done with this bill and with this law in the press is almost political malpractice. They have to unring that bell. They have to undo that and have a really fair and full debate on the issue during the presidential election. And I think that'll be Obama's time to shine, especially when you contrast him with Mitt Romney, who is now flip-flopped on the issue. He's the one that brought health care, universal health care, to Massachusetts. And he was for it then. He sponsored and wrote the bill then. And now he's against it for political reasons. If there's one thing that the people do not like, whether you're a conservative or a liberal, it's hypocrisy. And I think this is a great time for Obama to point out Mitt Romney's hypocrisy on health care legislation.
Hey, Dave, I appreciate a few minutes here. Thank you so much. And that, again, Dave Mejias.